All right, let's jump right in. We're going to break down a hypothetical crisis, one set in the very near future. But, and this is the important part, it's totally grounded in real-world tensions. This is about the moment the world's single most critical energy choke point just slams shut.
I mean, just listen to this quote. The largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. And that's coming from the International Energy Agency. When they use language like that, you know it's not hyperbole. We're talking about a situation that has gone absolutely critical. This one single event sent a shockwave through, well, pretty much every corner of the global economy.
So what on earth could cause a shock this massive to the entire global system, right? Well, to really get why everything fell apart, we've got to first understand the absolutely crucial role of one tiny, narrow strip of water. Okay, let's talk about the global energy artery. The best way to think about it is like this. If the global economy is a human body, then the Strait of Hormuz, well, that's its main artery for energy. It's not just important, it's absolutely vital. Seriously, there's no other place on the map quite like it. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most critical maritime choke point for energy. Think of it as a giant funnel. A massive chunk of the world's energy has to pass right through it, connecting all those huge producers in the Persian Gulf with, well, all of us, with markets all over the globe. And here's where you really see the scale of it. I mean, look at these numbers. We are talking about a quarter, 25% of all the oil shipped by sea, and a full 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. All of it, every last drop, squeezed through this one tiny passage. The dependency is just, it's immense. In these images, they just perfectly illustrate the geographic reality, don't they? You can see this huge, sprawling network of oil and gas infrastructure all across the Middle East. But look, almost all of it converges on that one single exit point. And here's the kicker. There are hardly any alternatives, and the ones that do exist are super limited. So, that leads to the big question, right? How do you seal the strait? How do you turn off a tap this massive? Well, the events of early 2026 showed the world exactly how it could be done.
So, the trigger, it was geopolitical. On February 28, 2026, after a series of U.S.-Israeli military strikes, Iran retaliated. And the response was fast, and it was aimed right at the world's economic weak spot. They made their move to close the strait.
Now, what's really key to understand here is that this wasn't just some simple naval blockade. Oh no, it was a really sophisticated, multi-layered strategy. First, you had direct attacks with missiles and drones. That made the danger pretty obvious, right? Then, you had the hidden threats, sea mines, lurking under the surface. And finally, and this is clever, they created total navigation chaos by jamming GNSS systems. You know, that's the satellite stuff that runs GPS, basically making it impossible for ships to know where they were going. Just pure confusion. And the result? It wasn't gradual. It was immediate. Bam! Within hours, one of the busiest shipping lanes on the entire planet just went silent. That global artery we talked about? It was clamped shut. Just like that. So what happens when you turn off the world's main energy tap? Well, the first thing, and the most violent reaction, is the price explosion you see in the markets. Just look at this timeline. It's unbelievable. On February 27th, things are normal. Brent crude oil is at $82 a barrel. Fine. The very next day, the day the strait is closed, it shoots up to 97. And just a few days later, by March 5th, 108 bucks. The sheer speed of this jump was faster than pretty much anything we've seen in recent history. And guess what? It didn't even stop there. The peak price hit a staggering $126. This wasn't just a little bit of inflation, you guys. This was a market in an absolute state of panic, staring down the barrel of a massive, sudden supply shortage.
And it wasn't just oil either. Remember that 20% of LNG that comes through the strait? Well, European natural gas prices, which are super reliant on that supply, literally more than doubled. We're talking a jump from around 30 euros a megawatt hour to over 60. This proved it wasn't just an oil problem, this was a full-blown energy crisis.
So now we see these cascading global crises. Because a crisis this big, it's never just about energy, right? The shockwaves start spreading out like ripples in a pond, and they start hitting other really critical parts of the global economy. And this is where things get really fascinating. You see how interconnected everything is. It goes way beyond fuel. For example, about 30% of all the fertilizer traded in the world goes through that strait. So you shut it down, fertilizer prices spike. And what does that do? It directly threatens global food security. And then you have other stuff like aluminum and helium supplies getting totally disrupted.
That messes with everything from making cars to high-tech medical equipment.
But what about the shipping firms themselves? I mean, for them, trying to get through the strait became practically impossible. And look, even if a captain was brave enough to risk the missiles and the sea mines, another, almost invisible barrier just slammed down hard.
800%. Let that sink in. An 800% increase in war risk insurance fees for any ship that even thought about going near the region. I mean, that's just an astronomical number. It completely rewrites the entire financial equation of shipping.
And this quote just nails it. The insurance cost for a single transit now often exceeds the value of the fuel consumed during the entire voyage. Wow. Think about that. It literally became cheaper to just not ship the fuel at all. And that's a concept called insurance paralysis. The financial risk just got so insane that it closed the strait just as effectively as any missile or mine. The ships just couldn't afford to go. So at this point, the global economy is just teetering on the brink. The pressure for some kind of diplomatic solution became absolutely unbearable. And that's what led to a very tense and very uncertain ceasefire.
So on April 8th, after weeks of just economic agony and heated rhetoric, there was a breakthrough. Thanks to mediation by Pakistan, the US and Iran actually agreed to a ceasefire. But it was a fragile one, and only for 2 weeks, just to try and get some talks going. The key word here, for sure, is fragile.
So what was the ceasefire deal? Well, it was a pretty straightforward trade. On one side, the U.S. commits to halting all attacks on Iranian soil. And on the other, Iran commits to reopening the Strait of Hormuz for passage. Basically, we'll stop if you'll open the taps again.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question. The strait is open again, for now. But has this whole crisis revealed a fatal flaw in our global supply chain? I mean, the immediate danger was avoided, sure, but this event exposed a terrifying vulnerability. It makes you wonder, right? Just how strong is our super-efficient global system when one single choke point can bring the whole thing crashing to its knees?